Welcome back to our latest episode of Sis Let's Talk About It. Today we're going to unpack building healthy relationships, right? And the essential ingredients. And of course, I got my good sis, Lisa Lickers-Ricks, on with me. Sis, what we talking about?
Hey, y'all. Welcome back. And thank you so much for tuning in. We would love to, just share with you all today what our opinions are on the essential ingredients of what a healthy relationship looks like, right? But it's only right that we bring in our special guest, and it's only right that I had to bring my good sis back, Rose-Anne Uwague. Y'all got to hear her on the last episode talking about the importance of women when it comes to the topic of self-care. And because I've been able to work with her over the last 4 years around the topic of healthy relationships as well, I thought it was super dope just to bring her back in and get her opinion on this topic as well. So for those that missed last time, make sure you go back, you like, subscribe, watch, and invite some other ladies to tune in, to the Sis Let's Talk About It network. But I want to introduce our speaker again. Her name is Rose-Anne Uwague, and she is an executive function productivity coach. She is my personal self-care and productivity coach, and I've had the pleasure of being able to connect with her and work with her for the past 4 years, and she has been a life changer for me, y'all. Seriously. And I didn't even tell y'all that she's my birthday twin, right? So even when we met 4 years ago, we didn't even know that our birthdays are one day apart and we're the same age. So I'm like, listen, sis, it was meant to be, right? So, all right. She is masterful at providing her clients with clarity, strategy, and accountability to achieve optimal results, right? She was featured on Forbes, weighing in on a conversation about productivity. And in her spare time, she enjoys traveling, reading, and exploring culture through food, music, and dance. She is a mom of 3 sons, and she is a wife of 10 years, right? And so that's another reason why I wanted to bring my sis in, because I'm only 5 years in, y'all, and it hasn't been the easiest. And we're going to talk about some of that today, right? But welcome, my good sis, Rose-Anne Uwague, to today's session of building healthy relationships and the essential ingredients. Let's welcome her in, and sis, let's talk about it. Hey,
Hey,
Rose.
ladies.
How you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back on your show.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So before we dive in today, right, I want to talk about, right, what is the definition of a healthy relationship, right? And so in my personal opinion, there's essential ingredients, which we're going to break down and we're going to talk about today, right? But it's the opposite of toxic, right? So when you think of toxic and dysfunction and what all that looks like, it's the opposite of that, right? Is what a healthy relationship is. So we're going to talk about today a little bit about even what a healthy relationship is not, right? I also think it's important to include like communication, right? And trust, right? And mutual respect, right? All of those things are important. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about boundaries and just growth, when you could be able to grow together, right? And so this doesn't only consist of just like personal romantic relationships, right? We can also dive in a little bit and talk about what a healthy professional relationship looks like as well. And we may even, dive deeper into that on future episodes, but we want to get to the tea today on what is a healthy relationship. So I'm going to ask our good sis Rose-Anne, from your experience, what are the foundational elements crucial for building and sustaining healthy relationships?
That's a great question. I would start off by saying that you have to have an open mindset, because depending on what happened in your childhood, depending on what's happening in your current relationships, you may be closed off to having relationships in general, or you may not understand what a healthy relationship looks like. So I would start by saying open mindset, because if you're off the mindset of hashtag no new friends, then you're already closing off yourself to what a beautiful, healthy relationship can look like. I'll even start by talking about you two. You two have such a great relationship, and I'll let you share your own story about how you met and all the things, but you understand the importance of the mutual respect and the open communication and really just showing up for each other, right? And the reason I mentioned open mindset is because of Lisa and I. Lisa and I are like the online dating friends, or the way we met. It's so interesting. Someone reached out to me on LinkedIn, and it was more of a, hey, let's have a conversation about what a potential business relationship could look like, right? And this was during the pandemic. I was taking everybody's Zoom. I was hopping on everybody's Zoom. I'm like, sure, why not? We're bored. And just after a couple of minutes of, just connecting woman to woman, she said, you would really enjoy meeting my business partner. And then she introduced me to Lisa. In a 45-minute conversation, not only did we connect, but we put together this program where we're telling women about a whole bunch of P's, like purpose, productivity, passion, a whole bunch of P's. And from there, our relationship continued. So like Lisa said, we found out later that we're birthday twins and all those things. But if I was like, the internet is scary, or you can't find friends on LinkedIn, or, just thinking that friendships have to start in a certain way or at a certain place, like, oh, we need to go to church together, we need to work together, it can't just be some random person from LinkedIn, then what you're experiencing right now, this blossoming friendship and sisterhood and partnership where we're doing life together, we would have never been able to experience that without an open mindset. So I would just say that's one of the foundational principles, being open to having relationships and to meeting new people.
Yes. Listen, I love that. And that is so absolutely true. And it's so funny because, if y'all didn't listen to our intro, make sure y'all go back and watch our intro and listen to that, because you will hear the story of me and Shaniece and how we met and how we got started, right? And how we became friends ultimately. But it didn't start it like that, right? Because I talked about how I was a low-key hater when I met her because she got a job that I wanted, right? But because I was open-minded to, getting to know who she was and all of that stuff, we became friends. And it's been a very long time, right? And I love that for us. And so thank you for bringing that up, Rose-Anne. And then the same with you, right? And it's so funny, even that person that my former business partner that met you is so funny because she used to always say, like, I stalked you. Like, nobody would give me your number. Nobody would introduce me to you. I heard you about all the amazing things that you were doing. And she told Rose-Anne the same thing, that she stalked her on LinkedIn. And once she got a meeting with her, and look, now we're here. So now stalking is not a part of a healthy relationship.
Let's be clear.
No.
It worked and it got me and Rose-Anne together, right? But just putting that out there. But Shaniece, let me pass it over to you. So tell me your thoughts on what you feel like might be like one foundational piece of a healthy relationship.
Honesty, I believe, is huge for a healthy relationship, because oftentimes people aren't who they tell you they are. And you find that out later on as they show you who they are, right? And unfortunately, we have to just be a whole lot more mindful in this season, in this day and age, because so many people hide behind screens, right? People can create versions of themselves that don't really exist. So I ask a lot of questions. I was like probably a former investigator in my former lifetime, because I want to know like everything about you, right? I don't want to figure it out later. Like, tell me who you are, show me who you are. Like, let's have these conversations. Let me choose if I want to be a part of your fantasy, right? I don't know. Like, what does that look like for you, right? Do you really work a real job, or do you work at that job in your mind? Do you work at McDonald's, or do you work at Capsugel? You know what I mean? Like, where do you really work, right? But it just goes along the lines of that. Like, people be having like 2 wives, a girlfriend, and some other things going on. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody who's saying they single aren't single, right? If a person can't take you home, why? Right? Where do you work? You know what I mean? Can we have lunch? Can I meet you there? Right? You have to ask questions. So I feel like just honesty in relationships, and even in friendships, you want to be honest with your friend, right? Because people have so many misconceptions on what friends are. And we talked about that as well in episode 1, as far as just reciprocity, right? What are you getting out of this? What am I getting? What am I giving? What are you giving? Because you don't want to be in a situation where you're always the one pouring. You're always the one giving. You're the only one. We can't do that. We will walk around empty, and we don't have time for that. Like, we got to be healthy, healed. Yeah. All the things well, right? So yeah, honesty is a big thing for me. I can go on and on and on, y'all. That's why we podcasting. So much to give.
But you're so right, though. Like, even when you talked about honesty, it made me think about communication and the importance of authentic communication, because a part of it is in relationships, the reasons you have either an unhealthy relationship or sometimes even a toxic relationship is, one, you're not honest with yourself in terms of what you want and what you need, and whether it's real alignment with your values. And two, you're not honest with the other person. So say, for example, even in a friendship, like forget marriage and romantic relationships, but even if in a friendship, if you ask me to do something and I say yes begrudgingly, or if you ask me if something is okay and I say yes, I'm not being honest with myself. I'm not being honest with you. And then now it boils into this ridiculous cycle of there's resentment and bitterness because I can't believe you did this, or can't believe you asked me to do this, where an honest, no, that doesn't work for me, or not at this time, would have saved you so much. So I really think you nailed it when you talked about honesty and the importance of just being able to authentically communicate your desires and know who you're even forming a relationship with.
Right, girl. Because there's too much stuff going on where people are like calling everybody a friend, and that's something that people need to be aware of as well. Like everybody you meet isn't a friend, right? Some people are not. They don't have good intentions for you, So just keeping eyes open, ears open, and not ignoring the things that are before you just because of desperation or just the need to want to be a part of someone's life, whether that's a new friend or a new relationship that you're forming intimately.
That's good.
Yes. Listen, so I want to add in on the topic of communication, right? And I want to ask you ladies, is somebody's lack of willingness to improve their communication skills, is that something that's considered like toxic? Is that something that shows that they don't really care about the relationship? If somebody has communicated that to them, like, hey, I don't like how you communicate, right? And it don't have to be like that, right? It could be I statements like, I feel this way, right? Where you communicate, because we don't want to point fingers at other people. Right. We don't want to make them feel no type of way. But at the end of the day, I think is individually, our job and our role to make sure that we show up as our best selves, we talked about self-care on the last episode, right? But more importantly, in the relationships that are important to us. And I feel like if somebody came to me and they said, hey, Lisa, I don't like the way that you communicate, right? Like when you say certain things, it makes me feel this way and things like that. If I care about that relationship, right, then I would be intentional about changing that. So what are your thoughts on that, right? Because I run into that a lot of times, with people in personal relationships and things like that, where, people are just set in their ways, like, oh, I've always been this way, or this is how I communicate. It's kind of like take it or leave it. But what do you ladies think about that?
This is a big one to unpack. And I say that because a lot of things that people show right now as their personality has to do with their childhood. It has to do with their traumas. It has to do with previous situations, and culture is a big one too. So as you're talking about like communication, I'm a very open person and I'm a very outspoken and authentic person, but in another culture that may be rude, right? So you may say to me, hey, Ro, I would like to do XYZ. Are you interested? And I'll say, oh, thanks for asking, but no, I'm not interested. And that may be rude because I really didn't have a choice to say no. It was just their way of communicating, right? So the reason I mentioned that is because if you don't understand someone's culture and you're just showing up the way authentically, which is how you're supposed to, and there's no communication that says, hey, this indirect question, it's really my way of saying, hey, I want you to do something, right? So back to your question of, if you're sharing with someone that they're communicating in a way that doesn't work for you, if they're not changing it, it may not be fair to just directly say they don't care about you or they're not intentional about making the change. It may be that there's so much for them to unpack. They're not self-aware. There are cultural things that they're trying to battle. There's their personality things that they're trying to navigate. So I wouldn't go directly to say that they don't care. I would say we need to give them grace in certain spaces to try to make the adjustments. In the same token, I won't make a bunch of excuses for grown folks, because there comes a time in a person's life when they need to be accountable to who they want to be and, stop blaming the childhood, stop blaming all that, but it does have an impact. So since I'm not a childhood expert and I'm not a psychologist, I will say that there are elements that play into it, but we have to be intentional about how we show up. So if someone does make that statement and say, hey, I don't like the way you communicate, it's an unrealistic expectation for us to say they're going to be emotionally intelligent and communicate the way we want them to, because there was a reason they weren't doing it to begin with. But to your point, if they do care, they should try to make the adjustment. So even if you see a change and then it slips back, maybe they're trying to make that change. So I won't say yes, I won't say no. It's heavy to unpack. And I think you can call it whatever you want, whether you want to call it gut or intuition. But when you have the Holy Spirit on the inside of you, you know when something is not right and when it doesn't sit well, and you can kind of determine whether something's intentional and malicious versus this person just unpacking stuff and have a lot of work to do. So
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Ro. And you touched on a great point, right? Because we're going to tap into that. Not today, y'all, but make sure y'all stay tuned for a future session, because I promise we are going to talk about these childhood traumas, right? We are going to talk about these mommy issues, these daddy issues. We're going to talk about it, because in order for us to show up as our best selves and to break these generational curses that's been passed down through our families, a lot of that is communication. A lot of that is, around those topics, right? It's funny because it's not funny like ha, but because of the topic, I'll just share on communication. My daughter, who's 23 now, she's a psychology major. She just graduated with her degree back in December. So it's funny because I remember too, when I was in school and I did my bachelor's in psychology, right? Around that time, I remember just looking around at everybody else, diagnosing people as I'm learning about stuff and things like that. But one of the things that she said, right, which was real, is she was like, listen, like, we don't communicate well in our family, right? Not just our, nuclear family, just us, but like our entire family, and she's like, when people do things, like they don't even apologize. Like one day we just start talking again, like everything is okay. Like that is not okay. That has to change, right? But again, we're going to save that for a future episode, and we're going to unpack that a little bit more. But thank you, Ro, for bringing that up. Shaniece, what's your thoughts on that?
Girl, listen, the whole try thing went out the window a long time ago. We either going to do it or we not. Okay. Try with somebody else. All right. Like, because honestly, because like in reality, like no one's getting younger, right? We're not raising children here. Like we're not having this conversation with toddlers. We're having this conversation with people who they are responsible for their own healing. So yes, grace will be extended to you, but at what cost to me? Right. So we are going to have to work on this together, whether it's a relationship, intimate relationship, whether it's a friendship that we're developing. I don't need no new friends. They got a bunch of stuff to unpack. Okay. Like you need to get your life together. All right. And if I'm somebody who you want to be a part of, like you just have to not even expect, because we're not on expectations. Right. But learning who I am, you have to be in the mode, in the mindset of getting things done. Right. Whatever those things look like to you, right? I'm a solutionist. If you come to me with an issue, we're going to have a solution. You're not going to call me today and then call me tomorrow or next week or next month with the same issue, because we had a conversation a month ago. What's the solution what was the solution a month ago, right? What is this? Why are we still having the same conversation today? Right. So I just feel like when people make you feel away, you are responsible as you to tell this person, like, even if you don't listen, I don't like the way you're making me feel, because I just had a conversation about using I statements, because you can be very, very direct and it can look like you're blaming them, even if the issue is them.
Right.
Using I statements makes it more individualized, right? I feel unhappy when you don't listen to me. Like I feel like you're not listening to me when I tell you how I feel, and things don't change, right? And then you give that person the opportunity to act. I'm not giving you the opportunity to try. You need to get it done. Okay. So if you come talking to me about certain things, you're just going to get a different response, because Shaniece is not going to allow you to try. Shaniece wants you to do.
I hear that.
Grace where?
Grace where? My name is Shaniece. Okay, the solution is, if you need to unpack some things, you need to go schedule an appointment with somebody who's not Shaniece, right? Whether that's spiritual counsel, psychological counsel, somebody. Okay.
But not you.
You need to get to the root of things. Like we can have pillow talk, we can have conversations, but if you're still giving me the same view after I explain to you how that's making me feel, we're going to have an issue. So I just think like communication, once again, is 100% key, but you have to keep that person accountable and also yourself, because if you're showing me who you are and it's not changing, I got to look at me.
That part. Listen, I think this takes us right into the next question, y'all. So how can individuals identify and address red flags in relationships to maintain their well-being?
I really feel like that even goes back to that whole point about like your gut or your intuition, or really leaning on the Holy Spirit. Because if you're in a relationship with someone who's controlling or abusive or negative, constantly judgmental, disrespectful, unreliable, you might be in a toxic relationship, right? Like there's no way to dress it up. So miscommunication and misunderstandings, that's a different thing from being in a consistent state of just toxicity, right? So I feel like basically, if you feel like someone is abusing you or they're manipulative or they're doing these subtle things like gaslighting and all those things, I think that's the red flag is there. So it's really, when you have that hunch, it's about, Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. I think the full quote is something to the effect of, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you do better. So if you're in a situation like, oh, I'm not sure, what do you think about this? Then I can understand why you're still trying to give it some time. But if you're clear that this relationship doesn't serve you, it doesn't align with your values, the person is not being respectful to you, then I think you really need to call it what it is. It's a red flag and it's not healthy and you need to get out of it. Respect yourself enough, like establish those boundaries. So back to Shanice's point, have the communication. Say, this is how this is making me feel. I'm not sure if you're aware, but now that we've had the conversation, you're aware, right? So if you start to see that the person is making those changes and they're making attempts to make a resolution, then I think that's one thing. But if you've shared with someone, hey, I don't like when you do this, and they continue to do it, that's just them. One, so that's their personality, need to accept that. And two, they don't care how it makes you feel. And that's a toxic relationship to be in.
Yes, listen.
Indeed.
What about you, Shaniece? What's your thoughts on that when it comes to addressing real red flags in relationships? And we already talked about, she said, listen, not over here, right? I'm not the one for that.
Listen.
It's someone else to do it, right? But let's
unpack, because it's so much to unpack there, right? But we have so much more in future episodes. That's why it's so important to come back, like, share, subscribe, because 41 Black women years, y'all. Let me tell y'all, in a lot of those years, there was some things learned, some experiences, you know what I mean? And so I just feel like people show you who they are. Sometimes they show you from the beginning, right? Sometimes people are transparent with you and you just say, I can love you through that. Change. You know what? You got a lot of potential. You know what? Potential don't pay bills. Potential don't make you, listen, potential not going to keep you happy. It might start there, right? Oh, he's a good talker and that's all he won't ever be, right? Because he don't know how to move. So you have to remember that potential doesn't get you many places, right? Because actions speak volumes. The old school saying, actions speak louder than words. If you tell me you love me, but then your actions are not changing, who do you love?
Yeah.
It goes back to what Rose-Anne said at the beginning. Trauma, childhood experiences that have nothing to do for you or with you create people that we are choosing to spend time with, learn and grow and love. So red flags are all around us. If you know someone all their lives and you meet them you reconnect years later, and then you're just like, wow, this is not the person I used to know. Absolutely not. Or they could be the person that you used to know. Some people don't grow.
Yeah.
Some people get older.
They age.
They don't grow, right? So that is a really big thing. If you're having a conversation with somebody and you know, right? Because you, like, for example, I'm not a psychology major, honey. I probably was one of those in my past lifetime too. However, when you meet people and they show you things, right? You have conversations with them and you see that the conversation, you hear this person's responses, you see their body language, like they're showing you, they're telling you, this is who I am. Even though you're telling them, this is how I feel. There's a disconnect, right? So once again, knowing yourself helps, because when you know yourself, you know what you will accept, you won't accept, you know what makes you feel good, you know what doesn't. You know that if somebody not listening to you, they're showing you they're not listening to you, that's a red flag. Because you're self-aware. You know how you want to be treated. You know how you want to be loved. I'm big on treating people how I want people to treat me. So I treat you very well. Everybody who knows me, you're going to be treated well. I'm going to show you love, because love is what you do. It's on my refrigerator. I write it around my house. I teach my children that, because love is what you do. Words mean nothing without actions that stand behind them. So red flags are all around us. And when you have 41 Black woman years behind you, you're able to identify those quite well.
Listen, I love that because my grandma who raised me in church, right, Mother Tucker, that's what she used to tell us. Love is what love does, right? And so that is the truth because actions speak louder than words. So many people can say like, oh, I'm willing to do this, I'm willing to do that, but where's the action that's going to back that up? And I think healthy relationships are intentional about the actions that are needed to better that relationship. And like you said, right, I think it's important to talk about because when it comes to communication, right, if you've never said anything to that person, how do they know how it made you feel, right? How do they know that that's something that, you know, bothers you, right? But once you've communicated that and you done gave time, like how much time we giving? Like how much, you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah. Then you're just making excuses at that point.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And we know we can make excuses, we can make money, but we can't make both, right?
No,
all right, that's a whole different story. We're gonna talk about money later. But I'm just saying with these relationships, because red flags are a real thing.
Yeah.
And one of the statements, I'm gonna ask you ladies to kind of share with me like one pet peeve or one statement that somebody makes, right? That signals like their unwillingness to grow or a red flag or things like that, right? So I'm gonna let y'all think about it. But mine,
I gotta think about it.
Let me go first. Okay. So mine is like still mine, but mine is I've always been this way. This is who I am, and I've always been this way. But if that is not working for you in your life and that's not working for our relationship, then something got to change. I don't want to hear that. I cannot stand that statement because people don't like to grow. They don't like to be challenged. They don't like for somebody to tell them like, hey, that might have worked for you in the past. That might have worked in a past relationship, but that ain't going to work here. Right. And so it gets into like an ego battle sometimes, right? You know, especially in relationships where it's like, no, like I'm the man or I'm an alpha man or I'm this or I'm that. You can't tell me what to do. Right. But no, it's not about that. It's about what does, and it's funny because me and Ro talk about this the other day, right? When it comes to like marriage, right? Is what does she need? What does he need? And what does the marriage need? Right. So a lot of times people got to think past that ego. They got to think past that. I feel like you're attacking me personally. No, but what does this relationship need? What does the marriage need? It needs healthy communication. Yeah. It needs trust. It needs honesty. All these things that we talked about, right? And this could go for friendships. It could go for relationships, right? But I'm going to let you ladies tell me yours.
All right, Shaniece, go.
Okay, listen, it's kind of already the one Lisa said, though. Like, that's why she wanted to go first.
Yeah.
So I think one of them would have to be like, that's just how I was raised, right? Okay, if that's how you were raised, how did it make you feel? Because like, let's unpack, right? So if somebody who raised you were unkind, if the person who raised you whooped you for everything, like if the person who raised you cursed at you all the time, right? How did that make you feel? So I'm right here always trying to have somebody unpack. You can lay on my sofa, honey. Like you can sit in the car beside me. We could have a conversation at dinner, have you crying in public, baby, because we're going to have a conversation. Okay? Because you're not going to continue to tell me you're doing these things because of anything that happened before. Because in today, you're responsible for your own recovery. Right now, right? We can't choose who raised us, right? We can't choose who loved us, right? And you can't tell me you love me, then you hurt me. Even if somebody loved you, hurt you, right? So just telling me that's how I was raised. Oh, okay. How did that work out for you? Clearly it didn't work out.
Clearly not too good.
Okay. Even if a person says to you like, oh, well, in the past, nobody had a problem with me, honey, because they wasn't healed either. But it's not going to work here, right? And you're not going to bring anything from your past into your present because you want to unpack that on the couch. Like you're going to have to unpack. Like you can't bring it here, right? And I love people. I'm a lover of people. I'm a lover of healing. I want people to love well, live well, eat well. Okay, let's do life well. Our ancestors did not have a good life. We can have a better life, right? I was just a kid 30 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Listen, everything wasn't bad. Everything wasn't great, but I'm here and I'm here for me. I'm here for my healing. So anybody who's a part of my life, they have to be aligned with that. For me, you have to be in the season of healing because if you're not, we're going to have an issue and you owe yourself that. So, oh, that's how I was raised. That's an issue for me because how you were raised is beyond me. That's beyond you at this point, sweetie, because we can unpack that if you want healing, if you want to be a part of my life, if you want to be something, whether that's a friend or a lover or whatever that looks like for me or for anyone else. You have to be ready to unpack and you have to be ready to heal. Oh, what is talking going to do about it? Honey, what is not talking done for you?
Yeah.
Love that. You need of help. So that's me.
Yeah, mine is pretty much the same thing. You actually just said it. That's just me. Like people say, like you'll say, oh, how come, why do you do that? Or why do you look at life like that? Or what's going on with that? That's just me. Okay. Well, like you said, how's that working out for you? Right. Or like someone may say something to the effect of, that's just the way I've always done it. And it's this fixed mindset of, I'm too old to change. Change is too difficult. I don't want to do something new. You just have to accept me for the way I am. And to a certain degree, I get that. We do have to accept people for who they are, where they are, but we also have to challenge people to grow. And if they're not willing to grow, then we have to accept that, right? Mm-hmm. So it goes back to self-awareness. If someone doesn't realize that there's more for them or that they're showing up in a certain way that doesn't serve them or anyone else around them, once you communicate that authentically and you share that with them and they're continuing, like they just don't care, that's just me, that's just the way I've always done it, then you're building up a system around you where you're just going to be by yourself for a very long time because people are not going to tolerate something for so long, right? Like I get love, but I can love you from a distance too. Mm-hmm. So,
and that's not love. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, what does love mean to you? Right. That's a very important question. And it's almost like loaded because some people, if you were raised on survival, then what love looks like to you is not going to be what love looks like to me.
Yeah. Constantly coping.
Right. It's a different type of love. So just being transparent and having those conversations, right? Instead of just jumping into things like, what's your favorite color? Like, I want to know who raised you. What was your relationship like with your mother? Your father?
Those things are important. Listen, and I listened and I heard something recently where it was like, listen, I don't get to change or control how you love, but I get to observe and see how you love. And then I get to choose whether I want to be loved that way. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important too, because a lot of time us as women, we think we can be everything, right? Oh, if I love this person and I'm everything that they need and I'm this and I'm that, I can change who they are and I can change the way that they love and I can change. It's not like that. No, like we have to do our own work, right? And again, we're going to unpack this on a future episode, right? Because that's important. But I think it's important to talk about that, because we toss the word around a lot of times, right? About healed, right? And that's the truth. Like when you come from a place of healing, you have zero tolerance a lot of time. Not saying that you don't remember what it took for you to get healed or you don't have grace for people or empathy for them until they can get to that place. But there comes a point in time where it's like, listen, like if you don't want healing, then I'm not going to allow you to disturb my peace, because you got into a place of healing, you got to a place of peace and peace of mind in your life. Like there's only so much that you're going to allow, before somebody has to raise to the occasion or get left behind. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important to know and to talk about. Right. Because people always talk about hurt people. But what about heal people, right? Mm-hmm. Like you got to want to do the healing. It could be the love that I have. It could be me showing you how I healed myself, myself or, through God or, things like that. But you have to want to get to that place. You cannot be okay with being where you are and who you are, right. Or who you've been or who raised you or, all of these things that we hear and that we just talked about, right? I think those are red flags of toxic people and relationships that don't want to change. And if it doesn't serve you, like how long do you stay in that before you decide that this does not serve me well and this is not assigned to me, right? Or this is not, my peace. I'm not willing to sacrifice my peace.
Lower your standards.
I'm willing to grow, right? And I love how Ro talked about that fixed mindset. That is so real and so important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, ladies, any final takeaways on the topic of healthy relationships and any essential ingredients that we haven't talked about yet that you want to leave with our viewers?
So I'll share some.
No, you go. Like and share, y'all. Like and share them. Go.
So I'll share something on the positive side because I have, people talk about your network. Your net worth is your network is your net worth, meaning like the relationships that you have, that's really what matters. It's not just the financial currency. And I have to say that I'm blessed to have some amazing relationships. Like even going back to you, Lisa. Lisa's mindset is just so amazing where she's not interested in being on the top and then everyone else being below her. She wants everybody to win, right? Like the way she says it is, can we all eat, right? Like that's Lisa's mindset. And when you have that kind of reciprocity where it's not just that you're taking or taking the advantage, but you're pouring back into people, that's a true tail sign of a healthy relationship. When you want others to win, when you give people the advantage, when you have open communication and even establishing boundaries. Like it's not a bad thing. Boundaries doesn't mean that you were hurt and now you're setting up this wall. It means that you're self-aware and you understand what you need to thrive and that you communicate that. So I feel like in terms of healthy relationships, it's really understanding the importance of relationships, understanding that relationships are bridges. And it's not to get you from one place to another place in a career or in terms of finances, but in everything. Just like how you talked about, sit in my car and talk. It may be you talking with me about something that I need to heal on and helping me to get over to that bridge, right? So I just feel like in terms of healthy relationships, it's important to have reciprocity, be a giver, and also be smart. So we talked a lot about like the red flags and the things that we shouldn't do. But I want to really highlight the positive aspects of beautiful relationships and how they are possible, right? So do not do the hashtag no new friends. Like amazing relationships are possible. You can have healthy relationships. You can have beautiful relationships that include reciprocity and great communication and great, mutual healing. So I just wanted to share that.
Yes, yes. And for me, like love is what you do, right? Love is what love does. Love starts within, healing starts within. I encourage everybody to learn who you are, learn what makes you happy. Because when you know joy, when you know love, when you know peace, then you can be that for somebody else. Nobody wants to be in a situation with a person who cannot bring peace to the table.
Yeah.
At a minimum.
Yeah.
Peace is what you need to be bringing to people. You have to be able to give something. You can't ask for something you can't give, right? You can't go into situations saying, oh, I got money, but you have no peace. Okay. So just being aware, loving who you are, loving the people that you're trying to be a part of their lives, learning who they are, just having an open mind, like Rose-Anne said. I'm not necessarily team no new friends, but I'm very observant about people, the way they move around and things like that, because I'm a big observer of how people treat people.
Yeah.
So if I watch how you treat other people and then you try to come treat me nicely, I'm gonna fade you because you showed me that you don't know how to treat people, right? So just being observant, showing love, giving love, and just big on reciprocity. Like I'm huge on that because I have a big heart and I love to give and I love to see people happy, healthy, and healed. So like if we gonna do it big because that's the only way to go.
Love it.
Love that. Love that. So ladies, as we wrap out, I just want each of us to go around and do one practical tip in one practical way that our listeners today can walk away and start to be more intentional about building a healthy relationship. Because again, that's important, right? How intentional are you on what's one thing that you can do? So for me, I'll start out and then I'm gonna ask Rose-Anne and then Shaniece, you could give your takeaway and then close this out, right? So my one takeaway I would say is begin to do some self-evaluations on yourself, right? Because I'm big on that, right? If everybody spent this much time focusing on themselves and what their flaws are and what they need to fix that they can do for everybody else, and it's so easy to point out the next person like, oh, this is what's wrong with you, this is what's wrong with you, but you can't see for yourself what is wrong with you. That's a problem. And so I feel like some self-evaluations need to happen and need to take place, right? And begin to be real with yourself, right? If you have an issue with communication skill, find ways to better communicate, right? If you have an issue and you know that you have past traumas, right? Which again, we're going to talk about that soon. So make sure y'all come back around to the next episode. But make sure you go into therapy. There's nothing wrong with therapy. Jesus and therapy together is a good mix, y'all. So we're going to talk about that too. But just make sure, like I said, you're intentional about it. You identify what those areas are and then you do something about it, right? I'm big on not being a big talker. Those that know me, I don't do a lot of talking, but I do a lot of making things happen, right? I think that might be my middle name. But I'm gonna pass it over to Ro. Ro, give us one practical tip of what our viewers can do to embrace more healthier relationships.
Yeah, we know why you started, because you took mine. I was going to say self-awareness, because I feel like we need to understand our own needs. Like, relationships are not just external. We have a relationship with ourselves. So we first need to start by understanding our own needs. And then this is where the communication piece comes in, sharing our needs, and then establishing and building those boundaries to protect it and make sure those needs are met. So I would just say, have those standards. And I'm going to drop something real quick because I know we're ending, because this has to be a whole different episode. Learn to say no. That's a big piece. So that in itself is a whole 5-episode podcast. So I would just start by, understanding your needs, sharing those needs, and building boundaries around those needs.
Nice. And I'm gonna just listen, I statements. I feel, I know, I see, I want, I need. I statements, because that expresses, and that's how you are learning if the person is listening to you. Communication is key. Listen, thanks for tuning in to Sis Let's Talk About It, and we will see you all soon. We out.
Bye.